Naturally, with all the hype on this movie, you know who this character is. But in case you don't, it's Black Adam. And yes, The Rock is playing the character. This is probably one of the better actor likenesses that Todd Mcfarlane has produced. However, this video will focus on the logo on the chest. I want it to light up. Let me show you what I did. Just like any other figure, we need to take this one apart, and we need to remove that chest logo, and we're going to do that by adding some heat with a hairdryer. And those funky swivel joints on the wrist, a lot of people like those. I could really care less about these. I'm going to change them out, and I'm going to do the same thing. Heat them with the hairdryer, pull them off, and I'm going to cut off those joints, and I'm going to replace the hands with the Dark Knight Superman hands. Well, here it is. It's all taken apart. Comes off very easy. There's actually very little glue on this, but you still have to be careful not to damage the piece because we need to make a resin cast out of that logo. And of course, the head, we're going to be using that again. We're only removing it so that we don't damage it while we are working on it. The actual abs come off of the chest or detach from the chest very easily. It's this very soft plastic, so very little heat is necessary. Here's those funky wrists, and I don't like those joints that are protruding when you move it. And these hands are too small anyhow, so we'll replace those. So what you'll need is some of this resin dye because the resin is usually in a clear state, and you'll need to color it whichever color you wish. In this case we're using yellow, and I'm using a silicone mold that I already preheated and molded it around the actual emblem, and I've already poured in my resin and cured it with some UV light, and this is what it looks like. It still needs a little bit of cleanup, but this is now a translucent logo, so we can shine some light through it and it will give us that glowing effect. Let me show you what this looks like. Here's the comparison of what it looked like before and what it looks like now, and though it's not that same yellow, it's going to look different when we light it up. Now, this is what the cavity looks like. I had to drill into it to run some wires through. Let's make a test fit of that logo from that resin. It needs a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of corners to be aligned or cleaned up so they match up. But this is essentially a just replacement of this rubber piece. And so far so good. So I've tried many of the gold paints and I'm really not happy with them, but as soon as I came across the rub and buff from somebody else's video, and that was Cosplay Chris, and thank you very much, sir, for that recommendation. This stuff is awesome. So I bought it in the silver and the gold, and contrary to the movie mythos or belief, gold doesn't tarnish. It doesn't actually wear out unless it's something gold plated and it just flakes off. So if that's the case, then you bought yourself some cheap imitation gold items. In this case, I'm going to add some of that gold color back into the figure because, again, gold doesn't tarnish. In this case, it's going to give it a little bit more contrast and more character. And this is not a paint. If you read the actual container, it says it's a pigment, which means this is going to be permanently stained. And for me, that's great because I don't have to go in and touch it up again. Now this will wear off with the oils from your hand, so you will have to seal it. So if you want it to stay in a high gloss, then you use a high gloss sealant. If you want it to be matte, then obviously use a matte sealant. So make sure your hands are clean and free of touching the actual pigment, because it will transfer very easily to any other part of the figure. Now you can use this with a cotton swab to just rake across the actual relief or the details and make them pop, or you can burnish it into the actual design and make it look like it's part of it. In this case, we're going to just burnish it into a few portions of it and bring out some more contrast. Now, if you want to go into deeper detail, you can use an actual brush to get in some of those details. This stuff dries very quickly. Within a matter of 10 minutes, it's dry to the touch. However, as I said, you can still transfer some of that if you've got some wet spots. So it's best to let it dry for at least an hour. Seal it and then work on your figure. And this is the same for the gold, the silver, and there's also a bronze, which I'm about to get later. Now there's a lot of detail that is very difficult to see, or engravings on the actual design of the back and the chest, and you can enhance those either with a black paint by dry brushing it, but your black paint will have to be a high gloss. If you don't have it, then just use an actual gloss sealant and dry brush it over the design to make them stand out. If you use a matte finish, then it's not going to pop. It's not going to be a contrast. Once it's dry, it's going to be matte, and it's going to be difficult to see to begin with. But if you use a high gloss, just dry brush it over very lightly, only on the actual relief of the design. Don't push it into the actual work. Then you're going to be able to highlight those details. Once it's dry, you'll be able to hold it from any angle, and then it'll show up really, really nice. But that's all up to you. So somebody requested that I show what he looks like with hair. Well, I do have an extra sculpt, and this is only for show because it doesn't fit properly on this body. But when The Rock was young, he was a wrestler and he did have hair. This is what he kind of sort of looked like. And yeah, with the pointy ears, this is his look as Black Adam. But once again, this is not a final product. This is only to show what somebody requested. What if the character looked like this? Now getting back to the lighting for the logo on the chest, and remember that the lighting is from evandesigns.com, and there will be a link in the description below. I want you to observe really close at the chest here. There's a hole in the center that I drilled, and it goes just above that peg hole. The wires just barely clear that ball head. Now, there is an excess of wire that you'll have to coil up and push into the cavity. There's plenty of room in there, so don't worry. And there's barely enough room to then fit the actual mega LED. It is a square and bright LED. Now, you can run a test, make sure it's working. There it is. If you are touching the logo the way I am here, be advised that the oils on your finger will soften and remove that paint. So the best thing to do is to cover it with a piece of tape, just like I did here with this blue piece. A little bit late for me because I ended up noticing that I did rub it off. Now the cables that you see here are soldered, red to red, black to black, and you will have an excess of wire on the battery, so you'll have to cut it off and match it to the length of the unit coming from the actual light. That way you don't have an excess of wires. I did break the wire on the battery compartment or the battery unit, and the actual piece just came apart, so I just replaced it with another. I had 3 in hand. They're very inexpensive. But this is what it looks like. It's working, and this is why you need to cover it with some tape, because you'll have to repaint your work. And this is what I ended up having to do. Having to retouch that logo once more. It's not bad, it's not difficult, but it's just another process to take on. Now you'll have to glue this on. You'll have to use your Fabri-Tac glue or other glue that dries slower. You don't want to use super glue because it can get everywhere, even if it's the gel, and if you clamp it down, it could glue to the clamps. If you use the other glue, it dries clear and it's easy to remove any excess. Now we'll hide those wires in the back in a few moments. Right now, it's only attached by the ball peg, so there's plenty of room in those with the wires to be moving around in there. But this is what you'll have to do. Leave it there for 4 hours. So this is our final look. And yes, I did hide the switch in mid-back. I cut a small notch, push the switch into place, glue it in, run a test, and this is what it looks like. Just like the movie logo. So if this is all you are doing to your figure, then you've done something really, really good to your figure to enhance the look. And yes, I did switch out those hands as I mentioned before. I used the original pegs, cut them off, and glued them into the Superman Dark Knight figure hands, and they work just fine. It retains the swivel, but it doesn't go back and forth. So there's one loss of mobility there. But the hands are a little bit bigger. I like the expressive hand on the right, and the grip hand, or I should say this fist hand on the left, is a little bit larger, but it has the proportions that this figure needs. It's up to you if you want to go further with anything else, but as you can see, the gold on the belt is really much more enhanced. I'm going to leave you with the rest of this clip. I hope that you like and enjoy the video, and if you learned something, great, fantastic. If this is your first time visiting the channel, thank you for stopping in. If this is your return visit to see more of these videos, thank you once again for stopping by and viewing the content. We'll see you next time.